Your Legislators is made possible in part by the generous financial support of MAPE members, making Minnesota clean waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans. Live from St. Paul, Minnesota, we welcome you to another season of Your Legislators, a roundtable discussion featuring state lawmakers who are prepared to answer your questions and discuss important issues affecting citizens of Minnesota. Now, here's your moderator for tonight's program, Barry Anderson.
Good evening and welcome to Your Legislators. We're delighted that you could join us on this spring day. The temperatures are showing signs of getting rid of the last of our snow, and that means, of course, that the activity of the legislature is heating up a little bit. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about what that activity might constitute, and we want to invite you to be a part of our program. So call in your questions at the number that's given on the screen. Send them to us via email or our various electronic means, Twitter, Facebook, etc., and we'll see that they get to our distinguished panel of guests who will help us unravel the mysteries of St. Paul. We begin this evening, as we do each week, by introducing that distinguished panel of guests. And we start to my immediate left from District 17B, Willmar, Representative Mary Sawatsky.
Yep.
Am I close enough? Or,
you're pretty close.
Pretty close. All right. Well, you've been with us before, but tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Mary Sawatsky. I'm a special education teacher in Willmar at the Willmar Middle School. I teach students with learning disabilities, and we have students 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And right now I'm on leave as representative in 17B. So it's a pleasure to be here, and look forward to our discussion tonight.
Very good. Also joining us, been a regular for a number of years from District 17, Claro City, Senator Lyle Conan. Senator Conan? Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah, and it's good to be here, too. I represent Senate District 17, which includes Candy, Ojai County, Swift, Chippewa, and most of Renville County. And I live in Claro City with my family, and most of my life I was a dairy farmer, so that's the background I come from.
And we can be characterized as a retired dairy farmer. Is that kind of
right?
Yeah. I inflicted on the panel earlier this year my story of when I encountered my first dairy farmer very early in my legal career, and I made the mistake. I was a kid from Mankato. I didn't know much about the dairy farming business, and I said to the dairy farmer client, I said, well, will you be going anywhere for January, for the winter? And he looks at me and says, I'm a dairy farmer. Unless the cows go with me, I'm not going anywhere. So I'm afraid there's a little truth to that.
And that's the way it is with dairy farming.
All right. Well, we're delighted that you're here with us. Also joining us from Breezy Point, District 10, Senator Carrie Ruud. Am I pronouncing that right?
Absolutely.
Well, that's, blind squirrels and nuts and so forth. So tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, I represent Senate District 10, and that's all of Aiken County and all of Crow Wing County. And so I have the beautiful Brainerd Lakes area and the Aiken Lakes recreation area. And so we have a lot of exciting things to do in our area. And most people have been to see us on vacation or maybe for a timeshare or boating or recreating. Mm-hmm. And my husband and I have a small independent real estate company, and we've been in business for about 25 years.
Do we dare ask how the real estate business is these days? How is the real estate business?
You know, we're seeing a really good upswing in our market. First time we've seen it in a long time. I do a lot of the foreclosures in the area, and I have none in process, which is a great thing for our market. And we saw our unemployment rate in Brainerd go down for the first time in a long time. We're looking at the housing market to have a really good, solid spring.
See, you watch this program, you not only find out what's going on in the legislature, you find out about the economy as well. So this is a full-service operation. And finally, joining us from Sartell, District 13B, Representative Tim O'Driscoll.
Good evening.
Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Tim O'Driscoll, and I represent the Sartell, Sauk Rapids areas of central Minnesota, which are located in Benton and Stearns County. I also have St. Stephen and Holdingford and townships in between. And as I was on the show last time, I said I'm sort of city mouse and country mouse because you have a large predominance of agricultural activities in our district as well as a pretty urbanized area with a lot of medical businesses as well. And people may remember Sartell because we talked about this last time when I was on the show as well, the Verso paper mill that had exploded a few years ago on Memorial Day. That's our most recent claim to fame, I guess, as far as activities that have occurred in our community.
I have to say that Representative O'Driscoll last year, along with Phyllis Kahn, they really carried a great load here. They were our only two guests, and they did a terrific job. So you've got help tonight.
I do.
We got a full team.
I do have a suggestion for next time. If the 5 of us are here together, that we relocate and go to your district and enjoy the lakes.
See, there you go.
Absolutely.
A remote
we have a brand new
broadcast.
paddle boat on the Breezy Point Resort, and we could all go out on the lake. And,
Fishing opener kind of
yeah.
Hey, there you go. I like this. All right,
Fishing
we'll do
opener
this.
is in our district this year.
Is it?
Yeah, Grandview Lodge.
Will the ice be gone?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Very good. Very good.
She's got to narrow down yes or no.
We
All
have
right.
other options.
So Representative Sawicki, let's start with, we were talking before we went on the air, this is kind of an inside baseball thing, not necessarily the kind of thing that gets headlines, but this compact. And it's important to some Minnesotans, and it's a piece of supporting our veterans as well. Tell our viewers a little bit about what you've been working on.
Well, the First Lady, Michelle Obama, had suggested or asked Minnesota to join this compact. And what it is it's an interstate compact for military children. And the substance of the bill is to join this compact with the rest of the 50 other states, but right now there's 40 other states that are part of this compact. And what it would provide is more of a seamless or flawless or less stressful entrance into the school district or any of the Minnesota schools. If a student comes from any of the other states, that because sometimes their paperwork or their transcripts don't follow quite as quickly, or we expect or would like to see some of their other classes that they've taken don't come quite as quickly as the children do. We'd rather have them start school, get enrolled, and we worry about the details later. But what this compact says is you have a military child coming to your school, your district, and please accept them. They are part of the compact from another district or another state. And so it's one of those things that just calms, so to speak, the military family. It's because of nothing that the student has done wrong, that their parent is part of the military, and so we don't want to punish them or hold up their education. And for instance, an easy example of explaining this is the students, maybe one state might say that you need 3 years of math. But then you come to Minnesota and we might say 4 years of math before you graduate. Well, the student might be mid-year, senior year, and are we not going to allow that student to graduate because they haven't been able to be here long enough to take those classes? And so this compact says, as the sending state, from the sending state, would you please recognize the student? And if you are having problems with this, Minnesota, we will work with you, but please allow this child to go through the rights of whatever that person might be able to do. So, for instance, if they were expected to graduate and they couldn't because they're not meeting our standards, that then the sending state would work with us, and maybe the diploma would come from that sending state, but we would allow them to, so to speak, walk during graduation. And so it's at no fault of the student, but give them a break because thank you to the families that have enlisted and been part of the military. Right now we have about 200 students that this does affect, and so it's not a high visible impact that it would have on the state of Minnesota. But it's been through quite a few meetings or committees. Today I just completed the 5th committee, and there's a lot of great vetting with this issue. And I understand compacts are interesting, and there's a lot of details to it. So we need to take it seriously. I guess the thing that we need to keep in mind is we just want our students to enter school, feel comfortable and accepted, and have the ability to continue on with their education and let the adults do their thing, but not make the child feel so bad.
Likely to pass?
I certainly have every confidence that it will pass. I know in the Senate
It went through our committee unanimously, and so it was sent on its way. I'm not sure where it's in the process, but I know through our Education Policy Committee it was a unanimous vote to pass it on. I think it went to the Finance, and I'm looking for a good resolution on that bill. Something we
great.
can all be proud that we accomplished this session.
Yep, that's great.
A viewer from Duluth wants to talk about pension funds. When is the legislature going to deal with the $17 billion public pension fund deficits? Viewer claims that the deficits have increased over $1 billion in the last year, is worried about this issue, thinks the changes made in 2013 weren't enough. Is there anything going to happen on that this session? Who wants to take a run at that?
Pick me, pick me.
All right, you're on.
And I am on the Pension Commission, that's why.
Well, that's right. That's right. We picked the right person there.
Pick me on that. We just on Tuesday evening finished up the 2014 omnibus not tax bill, that's coming later, the pension bill. And what has happened is we've discovered that Minnesota has been receiving on average about 8 to 8.5% return on the money over the last 30 years that we've had in the pensions. Problem is that's our target. So one would say, okay, so if you're hitting your target with where you want to be, things would be great. We're still finding that in our various pensions we are underfunded anywhere from, or I should say, putting it in the positive, we are funded anywhere from about 48% in some of the state pensions up to about 72, 74%, depending upon which of the pensions you're looking at. There is an unfunded liability in the pension plans. Teachers' pension, police and fire pensions, MSRS, which is a vast majority of state employees, of about 16 to 17 billion. It's an awful lot because it's about a third of what the state's budget would be in any given biennium, just to kind of put that into perspective. It's not as bad as some states. The state of Illinois just announced, I'd seen some research on it, are about $118 billion. So we are $100 million better off than they are. Hawaii is at about $15 million. So it just gives you kind of an idea. Billion, excuse me, yes. I'm still used to thinking of numbers in local government context than I am in state context. But nonetheless, it's a large unfunded liability. Some of the things that we did do in the pension plan, which is a positive this year, is the contributions that the employees will be making, as well as contributions that their employing entities of government will be paying, are going to increase. That was a trigger that was put into statute that says, as we get the actuarial reports back over a period of time, if we're not hitting the bogeys that we need to be at, there'll be automatic escalators. And this year's going up from anywhere from about 1/4% to 3/4%, depending upon which plan you're in, and if you're an employing entity versus an employee that's paying in. The biggest hurdle I see in the pension bill this year is that there are 2 teacher pension plans that are still freestanding, the Duluth Teacher Pension Plan and the St. Paul Teacher Pension Plan. There is about $15 million, $15 million a year that's being proposed in there from the state's general fund that would go into the Duluth Teacher Plan for the next several years, and several years is 20 to 25 years, at about $350 million by the time we're done to be able to shore that plan up and be able to meld it into the TRA plan, the State Teacher Retirement Plan. That plan right now has more people drawing from it than there are people paying into the plan, and I tend to believe with what the person from Duluth has said, we need to be looking at that and finding different ways to be able to support those. We've made promises to people, but we cannot continue to make this style of promise and still have these pension plans be solvent. I've shared with people, I think, that these are sort of canaries in the mine that are going to be some potential problems, and we have to really do some things to change people's philosophies on how those pension plans may end up working, and maybe look at a blended plan, a defined benefit with a defined contribution, or doing some changes when you come to employ in the public at a certain date. Your plans aren't going to be defined benefits, they're now going to be defined contributions, so that we can get our arms around that overall funding. Back to the 8 and 8.5%, again, we've hit those bogeys over those periods of time. We still find out that we're substantially underfunded to the 16, 17 billion. Long answer, short question. Sorry.
Complicated issue. Other comments on the pension plan? Should we start with you, Senator Cohn?
Well, I've never been on that committee, and so I really don't know a lot about it. I know that in the past few bienniums, there's been some adjustments made on it, but from what I'm understanding here now from Representative O'Driscoll, that we're still not there yet. But there has been some movement, some change over the last a couple of bienniums at least. But it's a big issue.
Yeah, and I think in the Senate we're fortunate that we have subcommittees that work on that, because as you can see, it's a very complicated issue, and so it takes a lot of a big learning curve in order to understand the pensions. And so while neither one of us sit on that, we're very fortunate that we have good committee folks that really pay attention, and it's a tough committee to sit on, because it's a really large, complicated issue.
Any thoughts?
I don't, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Explained it well.
I should tell our viewers that one of the differences in Minnesota as compared to other states is that we do have a bipartisan pension commission, and that has been, however bad the problem is or however significant the problem is, and I'm not attempting to minimize it, but that is something that has been helpful and has perhaps kept it from being a little less of a political football than in other states.
One of the things that's unfortunate is you the way things are right now, and you're always speculating on investments and where things are going to end up being. It's a committee that you have to have thick skin to be on, because you're actually having to make some very difficult decisions that are affecting hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans and their families every day, every year. And I'm up for the challenge. I've got a number of years in the financial services industry, so I really can talk the talk and walk the walk with the experts that we have and the actuaries that are there. Sometimes you feel like a wonk when you're in there doing those kinds of things, but I do know.
We knew that about you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This isn't always a bad thing. This isn't always a bad thing. So, on to a more controversial issue. A viewer from Warroad and a viewer from Saginaw both want to know what's going on with the Senate office building. And this viewer from Saginaw says, hey, there are some large number of empty offices in St. Paul. Why don't we just fill those up? So, who wants to talk about the Senate office building and where it sits? Anybody want to start? Senator Conan, should we start with you?
Well, I can talk a little bit about it. I'm sure there's a lot of opinions on it. To the point of finding another building, say downtown St. Paul or something like that, you could do that. There's very few buildings that are large enough, though, to hold the Senate, because we would, at least for the short term, we're probably going to need a place to hold a session, too, at least for one session. So there's very few buildings. There are a few, but not very many that are big enough to hold that. And also, the cost of repurposing those buildings and the cost of hooking everything up so we're all hooked up for media, all the computer and telephone and all of that, we could be looking at costs from 18 to 22 million, which would pay for a third of the new Senate office building. So, those are the kind of things that are being considered. I know for myself, I like my office in the Capitol. Personally, I wouldn't mind staying there, but I know that that's not reality. As the Capitol is being refurbished, there's going to be space lost. In other words, the Senate won't fit in it unless we really redo the plans. But the current plans, from my understanding, the House will gain space in the Capitol, the governor will gain space in the Capitol, the Historic Society will gain space in the Capitol, and then there's going to be more space for the public, which includes, things like restrooms and another elevator and that type of thing.
And larger meeting rooms.
Yes.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
but that's right. And so, for the Senate to stay there, we'd have to stop everything and replan and then start again. And that idea of moving off into a building downtown, I mentioned the cost. We could be looking at 18 to 22 million, and that's just to get set up. But then, it would make business from that point on very cumbersome, because we'd have, quite a bit of distance between, as reports are moved back and forth between the two bodies and all things like that. I like to compare it to having a cafe that has the kitchen, half a mile down the road, and prepare the food and have to wheel it down, and so it'd be a little awkward to do that. But in the cost, and I'm giving you round numbers now, the total cost you always hear is about 90 million, but it's a third of that is actually a parking ramp and not the proposed building. But I'm interested in hearing what everybody else has to say,
Senator Root,
too.
your thoughts?
I think one of the biggest problem is that we never had a hearing and we never had a conversation on this. It was put in the bill last year and it passed. We never had a conversation about what were the needs of the Senate, what we should do, what were our options. And that's very problematic. Had we had that conversation about what we should really do, how much it would cost us, that building is only for 44 senators. It is not for the whole Senate. That's problematic. If you were going to build a building for the Senate, then make it for 67 senators. And right now, only the majority party would move into that building. And so I think that's problematic in itself. It's not functional, in my estimation. I would like to see a very functional building without reflecting pools, without gyms, without all the bells and whistles that go into that. And the parking ramp is probably the only piece that's really worthwhile in the whole thing, because if you try to park at the Capitol, it's very, very difficult. So we do need a parking ramp. But this building really never had a good vetting. $90 million is a lot of money. And I really think it should have come through the process like any other bill. And maybe we could have come to a good resolution about space, timing, money, taxpayers' dollars. I think it wasn't thoughtful enough. When we spend $90 million of taxpayers' dollars, I mean, they work hard for their money, and we shouldn't be so reckless with it as to spend it on that building.
President Sawicki, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I would agree with parts of this conversation. First of all, we are renovating our Capitol right now, and because of the renovation that we have decided to do, with the upkeep and making it so, because we haven't taken care of that structure, just by the process of remodeling and making spaces bigger and more usable for our citizens, because it is the people's home house. And I was looking for a restroom on, I think it was first floor, and I think I didn't know where I went in the end, because there aren't enough for restrooms in where a lot of people do generate and gather. But I guess, so I think we need a building that is certainly not full of bells and whistles. So I agree with you 100%. I also think that I think all the senators should be in one place. I mean, so I think that the makeup of what the building looks like, I think can be under, hopefully can be under discussion still, and make some adjustments there. I think there has been discussion, and there is a study going on right now about renting places, how much that would cost, how much to renovate and bring up to speed. When one of the suggestions was using the former Macy's building, and I think, well, that's going to be really convenient for our citizens. Go down to through what is about a mile from the Capitol and then the state office building where where the House of Representatives are. It's just not real user friendly for our citizens, and so I guess that's something that we'd have to consider. And I think that people should understand that if you are off campus, if you're relocated or permanently or temporarily even, I mean, there's going to have to be a shuttle system or something to make it more feasible for you and as well as for citizens. The parking ramp is absolutely necessary. I think that is something that we need to investigate or continue to have.
Representative, to that point, those are all conversations that are great conversations that should have been had before the bill passed. And so if we'd had those conversations, we wouldn't be here today. We would have a plan. We would know the answers to all those questions. I kind of liken it to remodeling your house. I remodeled my first house, and I can tell you that my things went in a box, and we were kind of inconvenienced, but I didn't go out and build a new house to stay in while I remodeled this house. And I don't think any of our constituents would do that. So all those questions are great questions, and they should have been answered before we got to this point.
Representative Driscoll?
Watch how I segue on this. We generate an awful lot of paper in our business. And the reason I say that is if we are going to undergo a renovation and remodel, one of the things that makes a lot of sense to me is that we would have taken those dollars and done the same thing to the state office building, and all the committee rooms would be having laptops or monitors where all the bills that were coming up, you get on a touch screen, be able to have all of these kinds of things coming up. And the reason I think that that's important is the revisor's office takes a lot of space in that building. We could electronically tie the revisor's office into the state office building, into the Senate, to the Senate conference rooms, and we could actually physically locate them somewhere else in a lower rent district. And it's my understanding just down the Capitol complex, the Centennial office building has vacant space in it. So if we were to take some of those support services and be able to relocate those in a remote area that could support this with a small on-site tech team to be able to help us with those things, we'd save a lot of paper. We'd end up saving a lot of extra use of things, and it would be much more efficient, I think, in that process. Yes, we need parking because it's very difficult for Minnesotans to come down to the Capitol to see their legislators and to see our business in action. I do believe that I heard a number that with the Capitol restoration, we found another 80,000 square feet that was otherwise cordoned off and inside of walls and different things. And if we really sat down and reworked some of those things, I bet we could move some of the printing in different areas that were there and some of the other kinds of things and save some square footage and really probably get by without putting another office building on the campus that really isn't going to fit into the historic look and feel that we have there. Nothing against the Department of Transportation, but that 8-story building that is in it that just really inhibits people's ability as they drive around downtown St. Paul to see that. That's the first thing your eyes focus on, and it really should be the Capitol and the dome of the Capitol, my opinion.
Where's the bill at procedurally? Where's the whole process at procedurally? Do we know?
Well, my understanding procedurally is that it has passed in the tax bill last year in the House and the Senate, and the only committee that has to sign off on it yet is the House Rules Committee, and that would be by a simple majority of members, and it has not been brought forward to the Rules Committee by leadership at this point. So that's my understanding. I would defer to other, maybe Representative Swatsky or
the House has the control about whether it goes forward or not. But they have not brought it up yet.
Right, yeah, and I would like to comment too, I mean, there's that idea out there, this is such a lavish building. You hear about reflecting pools and exercise rooms, that is not part of the plan. There are no reflecting pools or exercise rooms. Now, that doesn't mean the building won't look nice, but it costs the same to build a nice-looking building as an ugly one, so, you know, you might as well build it. But on the process, you know, there were some good points made up here, but in the tax committee in the Senate, on 3 different hearings, this subject came up. And then on the House floor, it was there again in the tax bill, or the Senate floor, I mean, when we debated it there. And then the decision was made not to have committees try and plan the building, but to form a group of legislators who are interested to get together to help develop the plan, along with admin. And I understand that members of both parties from both houses were invited. Well, I really wasn't interested in that, so I didn't go, and I don't know what kind of turnout there was in that planning process.
You didn't want to help make a beautiful building, or you'd be maybe blamed for an ugly building.
Yeah, it's realities of life. I got another job to attend to, too. So
if I might just add this as my final thoughts on it. Senator Coonan was talking about, you know, $18 to $22 million to do the phone and internet and all of those kind of relocates. You know, we would have those same kinds of hard costs, whether we put it in a new building or in a remodeled building. So I think some of those are costs that we would incur. It's just where we're going to ultimately make those kinds of investments. And it would have been, I'm with Senator Root on this, it would have been nice to have had more of a robust conversation about this and get input from the people who might be affected more firsthand by this.
Well, we'll have more opportunities to discuss it because I guess it hasn't yet gotten the good housekeeping seal of approval that it needs. So we'll just have to see where we go from here. Viewer from Swift County wants to talk about estate taxes. Viewer believes that there's been some opposition to raising the estate tax exemption to $5 million, and viewer doesn't understand why there would be such opposition. Many states have none. This, I gather, is a tax bill issue. Who can tell us a little bit about what's going on that?
well, I can start.
Senator?
And what he's talking about is an overall $5 million exemption when you're working through and calculating your estate tax. And what happened, I'm sure what he's referring to, what happened is that the Senate bill had a $5 million exemption in it. And then on Friday morning, when we took up the tax bill, there was an amendment offered to lower that general exemption to $2 million. And it wasn't that I think people were against the $5 million. It's just that when you looked out into, well, not so much the next biennium, but the bienniums after that, that it would really, really put the budget into trouble as far as having a balanced budget. And I think that's the primary driver for lowering that exemption from $5 million to $2 million, because it was fairly expensive. You go out 3, 4 bienniums. It's important for everyone to remember that the $5 million exemption for farms and qualifying small businesses is still in place like it always was, so that hasn't changed. And the gift tax was taken out too in the tax bill, so I think that really simplifies estate planning also. And so if you compare what was passed in the tax bill compared to what was current law last year, the general exemption went from $1 million to $2 million. The gift tax is gone, and the farm and small business, qualifying small business exemption is still $5 million. So that's in the bottom what happened.
We did have to change that on the floor because it didn't. The bill didn't balance out, and so it was changed from 5 to 2. But the farms were still protected. So
Right.
In legislative lingo, that's called tails. The years out where it just has the residuals like that.
And I think it's important to know too that, and I'm one of them, and probably some of you around the table here too. I think that's a good goal to get to that $5 million for federal conformity. But it's just that we're going to have to go at it a little slower pace than some of us wanted to. But we also have in Minnesota by law we have to balance the budgets, and so.
Representative Sawicki, any thoughts on the exemption issues?
Well, we're just fortunate that we have Senator Coonan, who works with it every day. So I look and respect, that we're looking forward, and because that wouldn't have, like you say, the tails is something that we have to be responsible for, and things that we can forget, and things that aren't necessarily on the people's minds necessarily, and to remember that we have to work out, and we don't want to spend money that we don't have for the future right now.
well, and I will tell you that this is really the first tax bill in my term in office that I've ever voted for. I think it was a very tough bill, worked on very hard. We did repeal the B2B and the business-to-business taxes. We didn't do the marriage penalty until next year. We'd have liked to have done it this year. But overall, I think we did it was a hard-fought battle, and I think this was a good tax bill. One of the things that I was really happy to see, and that's the federal conformity on the short sales for foreclosures, because Minnesotans had a huge tax liability. Some of the folks in my district talked about at the end of the year they would have up to $8,000 tax liability because of the short sale.
On a property they no longer own.
That's correct.
True.
And in something that they were really trying to do the most honest thing and have a short sale and not have it go into foreclosure. So we were very happy to see that happen, plus the B2Bs. And I think it was a good, solid tax bill. Could we have done better? Maybe, but I think overall, when you get the overall support on a tax bill that we had both in the House and the Senate, I think it shows that we really worked hard on that bill.
My thoughts would be that we had worked very hard at the end of last session to bring those B2B taxes and those other kinds of things forward, and we worked just as hard and as fast on the very first days of the legislative session to repeal those. We did suggest that those were going to be problematic for businesses and for family farms and for farmers to pay those types of taxes. The problem that we have is that they went into place, and now that they're coming off, we all want to be heroes on that. I would have just assumed we didn't deal with those, done all the conformity things last year, because I'm hearing from a lot of tax preparers in my district and people who are with open returns right now saying, Representative O'Driscoll, when am I going to know if I get the marriage penalty? Not this year. How about some of the other kinds of educational deductions that federal conformity have brought out? I've had some estate tax questions that Representative Coonan has outlined, and I've also had some folks contact me very, very concerned about the conformity as it relates to the short sales and the losses that they would be paying. Taxes do matter for people. They absolutely do matter for people in all income groups and individual situations.
Well, and I would have to agree. We worked very hard not to pass those taxes last year. And so, but it's really amazing to me that it only took such a short time to find out that they were a big mistake, so, and to repeal them.
Any other thoughts on the tax bill? If not, we'll move on. A viewer from Henning wants to talk about an issue that has had a fair amount of press and attention. What's the status of the minimum wage bill, and what about indexing to inflation? The viewer doesn't indicate whether he or she is for it or against it, but let's talk about the bill and the issues. Senator Rood, let's start with you, just to mix things up here a little bit.
Well, I think one of the conversations that we're really missing is, why do we need to raise the minimum wage? And I think it's because we're taxing our citizens, and so they need to make a bigger wage. And I think the question should be, can we lower their property taxes? Can we lower their income taxes? If we lowered their taxes and gave them more of their money, we wouldn't have to have a minimum wage increase. They would just keep more of their own money to begin with. That being said, I do favor the federal conformity of $7.25, not indexed to inflation, because most businesses pay that anyway. If you use a credit card in a business, you have to pay the federal conformity. So there's a very few people in the state of Minnesota that make less than the federal conformity. As far as indexing, that's just putting minimum wage on autopilot, and I really don't think we should do that. Right now, we're in a period of low inflation, but as soon as the federal government stops printing money, we know that we'll have a big inflationary period, and then we'll put that minimum wage on inflation. I'm very worried about a bill that we have up in committee tomorrow morning. We just got a hearing notice. Since that hearing notice went out a few hours ago, my email has gone absolutely crazy on people opposed to this, and that is putting statutorily the minimum wage autopilot in the Constitution of the state of Minnesota. A very dangerous thing to do.
So a proposed constitutional amendment.
Yes,
right. And
and that's coming up in committee at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And so that's a very dangerous thing to be doing. And so I expect a very spirited committee, and probably
As they say in the State Department, a frank exchange of views.
And a lot of folks, I think, are coming to the Capitol tomorrow to object to that.
Minimum wage, Representative Sawicki?
Yeah, well, we want Minnesotans working, and we want people working and feeling good about where they're and have that desire to work and feel good about going to work and providing for their families. And right now, even raising the minimum wage to $9.50 is not a living wage. It is. We need to make sure that our people that are bringing their money home to their families they can provide for all their needs. And I think that we need to pay our people. And I think that they need to, I think that there's been a lot of good discussion about minimum wage and about the large business versus small business, and making some accommodations there, and not a training wage, but a youth wage. So there are some discussions. I'm not on that committee to hear the day in and day out conversations.
Come join us tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm pretty busy tomorrow morning too. So, but I think to have to work, I don't. We want our families to be together and not have to have two jobs to make a living. And so it would be nice to be able to have families be able to work a 40-hour week, and be able to then spend some time with their families at home and enjoy their families and being at home. And when our families have to work 155 hours for a family of 4 to make ends meet. And that doesn't mean going to your favorite coffee shop to have a coffee now and again, or to order a pizza at home. It's just to provide for your family. So I think we need to look at that, and I think when everybody makes more money, everybody does better.
Senator Cohn?
What I hear from businesses back home is that they're not, a lot of them pay above minimum wage now anyway, so they're not so opposed to raising the minimum wage to some degree, but that they expect to be, they would like to see it be reasonable and phased in over time. And as Mary mentioned, youth wage is also important, and I agree with that. I think it is too. I would like to see both youth wage and training wage, and the difference is youth wage is for under 18, and the training wage is good for the first 90 days of employment. I believe that's what that is. And I think both of those are good measures, too, I would like to see. Now, I'm saying this without, I don't serve on the conference committee that's dealing with minimum wage, and I haven't actually had the opportunity to even go sit in on a committee meeting. So I don't know for sure what's happening in that committee right now. The question of the constitutional, the bill that would place the question on the ballot for the possible inclusion in the Constitution, the original bill, I think, sets the minimum wage and then indexes it from that point forward. So if the voters said yes, that's what would happen. I don't know for sure if that's what the final bill is going to look like tomorrow. We'll have to see. But, you know, what's driving this, I would say there's some, and this is my opinion now, I think there's some nervousness about this conference committee not getting together with an agreement to get this done, and so
They've been working a long time, all session, and I think that every other day, or they meet and they don't meet. And, so
and I think the voters should understand that the reason for that is that the House and Senate have passed differing bills.
That's right.
Last year, and so now this is in a conference committee, so it's not necessarily something that's before any of your respective committees or on the floor of the House and Senate, and so they will come up with some kind of a bill that will then be voted on with no amendments possible in the House and Senate.
That's right. It's an up or down vote at that point.
My thoughts, because I see everybody looking at me because I'm going to speak. My thoughts are very much in keeping what we just talked about in our previous conversation, and that is where we saw the B2B taxes, we thought, gee, that would be a great thing. Then immediately we found out that that was a problem, that it was hurting the agricultural industry. Businesses were having to pay exorbitant amount of taxes because they're doing business with other businesses, something we've never done in the state of Minnesota. Once you put something like that in the Constitution, as we have been reminded time and time again, it's permanent and it takes forever to get that out and to change that. If we are in a situation where we start seeing areas or pockets within the state, different types of businesses that aren't even in existence right now because of changes in technology and delivery of services and systems, we're tied into whatever the Constitution says we're supposed to do on that. And we may find ourselves in a situation where we see deflation, where we see other kinds of things that could create some problems for business pricing, but yet businesses are still locked into whatever that minimum wage is because it was $9.50 and now through inflation it's $11.50, and businesses can't even put a profit loss statement together that makes sense. The door is closed, people lose their jobs. The other thing that we have that I think is really important for people to keep in mind is that in a lot of our starting and entry-level positions, you'll have people who will be working at Minnesota's nursing homes who are either semi-retired themselves and looking for additional income or are getting started in a career, and they're making minimum wage or a little bit more than minimum wage to get some skills and to supplement income for themselves. Problem with that is that a lot of the people who are at nursing homes right now have gone through their own personal assets, and the state is now making a state payment for the care of those individuals. Great humanitarian thing to do, great respect for life thing to do. Problem that we have is if we increase minimum wage and we don't increase that, we've got pressure in the system on that. And we've also heard, I know I have from the nursing homes in my district, saying, you know what, the Obamacare Affordable Care Act isn't really affordable for us. We're already seeing pressure and wanting to come back to the state and look at increasing wages and increasing the money that they're able to receive from the state on those transfer payments. So we have a lot of these other little pockets that are in here. I was approached last year by national restaurant chains who said, you know what, we've got a model that if things get too expensive with labor, we can simply change our floor plan, put a soda fountain in. When you walk in, we'll give you a glass, we'll give you a laptop computer. You go and you push whatever you want on there, and then we'll just call you up by number, and then you pay when you go, and we can cut out a whole lot of people within the system. I don't like that idea because, you know what, a lot of those people who are working in those restaurants are men and women who are trying to better themselves, going to college, want tips, and we're going to cut all of that out of there. Or the potential exists on that. We really have to move slow and arduous on this. As much as people would say on the surface, yep, making that adjustment makes a lot of sense, but there's the ripple effect on it. And I would go back to what we just did in the last 6-8 months with the taxes and found out how tough that was, and wanting to change that as quickly as we could.
With that, you brought up some points I think are interesting. With that, trying to put things in the Constitution, there's been some ideas floating around that we need to raise the bar to make that harder to do. And one example would be you take 60% of both
Which
bodies.
is the requirement for bonding bills.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not an unusual number from that perspective.
Right, yeah, and you know, it would make it, just raise the bar so it's not quite so easy to do. But Tim also made some good points about the nursing homes and trying to compete in the labor market, and I think that's a big part of what's called the 5% campaign too now.
Which has strong bipartisan support
right.
as well.
And see those folks who work in those in that care for our elderly or disabled, you know, their employers don't have any ability to bring more income in. It's all, you know, the state, we set those levels, and so if we raise the minimum wage, there has to be an increase on that side. And even with the increase, if the minimum wage goes too high, it still doesn't help. So, you know, there's a lot of moving parts with this that we got to try and hold
And I think being
together.
rural legislators, we know how important our nursing homes are, and this could be very devastating to them. And we're seeing my nursing home operators call me and say, you know, if you do this, we could be out of business. And then we have services to our seniors and our vulnerable population. What do we do now? So I think we have to be very careful and deliberate on that, because we talk about it all the time in our rural caucus about how that affects us.
And we do have to be responsible for that. And we also have to remember that those workers that are there are working hard. And we want to maintain their relationships but with our loved ones and our elderly. But we also have to remember that they are trying to make a wage. And it is hard work. And if you can find that same kind of work someplace else, you have that revolving door. And I would rather have a consistent, loving person who wants to be there to be working with their elderly and feel like that they can make it at that job. And so it's a tough issue, and all these things are intermingling, and I agree. So we have to keep all those things.
Two quick things.
Yeah.
I want to underscore something that Senator Coonan said that I think is important for people to remember. In the state of Minnesota, the state sets what the maximum rate that the nursing homes can charge, because it's the maximum transfer payment from the state to the nursing home, or if I'm a private pay, it's the same amount. There is no disconnect. If you pay privately, or if there is a state transfer payment for the care of the individual, it's the same. Minnesota is one of the very few states that can do that, and nursing homes had been asking us to change that so that they would be able to charge differently for private pay than they would for the state-covered payment on that. The other thing I think that's important to underscore on this is we definitely don't want to have the state being involved in, my opinion, having to take over nursing homes and taking over assisted living facilities because they just are not financially feasible. Visions in my mind, the National Guard is out in these facilities. And that's just not what we need to have, because we could be at crisis at that level. A lot of the nursing homes are nonprofits. They're hanging in the balance as it is right now, and because they're nonprofits, they're continuing to try to roll back in for the care of the loved ones that we entrust them to take care of.
And I want to close the loop on the viewer's question about the linking it to inflation and automatic adjustment. And I think the way to answer that viewer's question is that issue is before the conference committee.
Correct.
And the four of you are not on that conference committee. So
Right.
we need to find those people and ask them that question.
And Barry, to that point, I think that's why you're seeing that this is taking so long when the House and the Senate passed it, because all of these kinds of inputs on the surface, as I was saying before, it makes a lot of sense. It's motherhood, it's apple pie. Well, how could you be? But when you start looking at those kinds of underlying things, it's a big chessboard. And when you start moving things, there's an equal and opposite physics reaction to things. So
A viewer from Warwood wants me to pick on Representative O'Driscoll. This viewer is concerned about the status of school trust lands and how they generate revenue for our state schools. And this viewer thinks you know something about that. So we'll start with you.
This is good. I like this.
yes, the guy who's got the diverging opinion stays the guy who gets to start with that. Well, interestingly enough, I think that question comes because I was very instrumental in my first term in the House in working on a bipartisan way and a bicameral way to be able to bring about an institution of the permanent school trust lands. And the reason you heard some of the others laugh on that is I'm the chair of that. Senator Root is the vice chair, and Representative Sawatsky serves on the commission as well.
And it has been awesome. It has just been a real pleasure to work with both of you, and I do have to say that because the best thing, the issue at hand is what we're all concerned about, and we want to make it right. And you're going to explain it because you do a really beautiful job doing it.
Doesn't he do a great job?
He does.
It's really,
Gosh, gee, thanks.
it's really the trust for the kids.
Yeah.
And that's I appreciate that. That's always been the focus. This is for the children in the state of Minnesota, and we are going to do our absolute best to make sure that we get them what they have.
Well, the pressure's on, Representative O'Driscoll. You better deliver.
Here we go. Well, little-known trivia fact, probably to yourself as well. You have tonight, in addition to some great panelists, the only Republican chair and vice chair in the entire legislature here on this side of the table, chairing committees. When we looked to put together the School Trust Lands Commission, we said, let's take the politics out of this. We're going to have senators on there. We're going to have House members. It's going to be 6 from the House, 6 from the Senate, 3 from the majority party, 3 from the minority party in both chambers. So there's none of this. So we get more seats, you get more seats, and we can make this political. The legislation also says that within the members of the commission, they will select their own leadership. So it's not outside leadership from the majority party, the minority party. It is take the politics out of it. So people are probably saying, so what are these trust lands? When Minnesota became a state, as is the case with all states across the country, we ended up having to set aside at least one section of land in each of the townships for the purpose of school funding. So I always tell people, how do you figure this out? Well, the little house on the prairie when the Ingalls girls went to school, to the one-room schoolhouse, it was out in the middle of nowhere. That was the school section property. It's section 16 in every township here in the state of Minnesota. We said if one is good, the federal law required, we would take 2. And so what we did is we took sections 16 and 36, set them aside. So we would be raising crops on there to buy school books for the Ingalls girls and to pay the school teacher and to get the wood in the furnace, all the things you remember from those days. As education has evolved in the state of Minnesota, as things have happened, the trust lands still remain. In some cases, they've been sold for profit. The money that's been generated has been put into the corpus to be reinvested in other assets for the kids in the state of Minnesota. Or there are some properties that have timber on there. Representative Sawatsky, myself, and Senator Root had the opportunity to go up to northern Minnesota to see these operations, to get a better understanding of what was going on so that we could make better decisions for the kids in the state of Minnesota. There's some mineral assets that are in there. Some really good things for the kids in the state of Minnesota. End of story is there's $1 billion with a B that's in this trust fund right now that pays money each and every year to school districts at about $29 per student. It generates about $29 million. We've got about 1 million kids, so it's $29 per kid that goes to help schools to be able to do some extra things. This is designed to be an asset that would be managed into perpetuity. And if you think about all of the property across the state of Minnesota, up in the Iron Range, you've got a lot of potential for minerals that are up there that can be leased, mined, and royalties coming in that can go into the coffers. The state of Utah a number of years ago took their properties, and because they had natural gas and other assets, and turned their corpus into multiple billions of dollars. So it's very significant in being able to offset school charges. And I don't know if that's what you were referring to, Representative Sawatsky, when you say I have kind of a way of explaining that, but that is a general overview of how those assets work.
And there's additional reforms that are underway?
We continue to do that. We're putting in some additional oversight to advise the Commission on this. We've had, again, very bipartisan support on these activities. We've asked the DNR to prioritize the lands, because not all the lands are going to be the most productive lands. They may also, just by the nature of the fact that it's two sections in the middle of a township, it might be in the middle of a state park that the kids own that property, and we may want to reunite that with the other properties that are in there, and so we'll put together a schedule to purchase those, changing ownership from the kids to the state of Minnesota. And we need to have funding in the bonding bill and other kinds of things to be able to make those happen. So we're kind of in the infancy of what we can do, but we have always made the pledge that we're going to leave it nonpartisan or bipartisan, and I think we've been very, very successful in doing that for the kids in the state of Minnesota.
I think one of the exciting things is over the past year, we directed the trust to do an inventory of the land, because over the years we've kind of lost sight of what they were being used for and the best resource on that. So this December, we got the full inventory of where are the lands, what are they being used for. And so now we're in the process of a 5-year plan about what are the best uses of those lands to bring the most money into the corpus for the kids. And so that was an exciting report. It's very detailed, and we've been going through that. We have meetings usually on Monday mornings to go through that whole report.
Representative Switsky, anything further on that?
Yeah, well, I think the highlight of it's been a learning curve, first of all, just to understand and know what it's all about. But the highlight was last fall when we did go and tour northern Minnesota and see our timber, and actually the process of how we do manufacture or get our timber, and then there's a real plan, and so it was a real exciting time to see what we were doing for our children.
We actually blew up
we did, the mine, yeah.
on the mine, yeah. We had to push
and
the
actually
button,
that day, it was a school trust land piece of property that we were mining that day. So.
And what was the dollar amount? It was.
They said that would generate in about 2 weeks $1 million for the corpus in royalties.
Yeah.
So.
Any thoughts on this, Senator Conan?
I tell you, I'm glad the three of these are.
If it were a dairy farm, you'd be
Yeah. You'd be teaching us how to milk that
Another
cow.
little piece of trivia, where one of the runways down at the airport here in the Twin Cities is former school trust lands.
Oh, interesting.
So as people come and go, they're actually landing on and taking off on former trust land property. We wish at this point we could have negotiated that a little bit differently back that property that just verges Ridgefield. But you live and you learn. So
It's like my father had a chance to buy some Lake Minnetonka property back in the 30s, but who'd want to live way out there? All right, we only have a few seconds left. Anybody have a prediction on when we're going to go home? When's the legislature going to end?
May 19th.
and no later than
Okay, nobody's going to take a bet on that. All right. I want to thank our panel for being with us tonight. I want to thank you, the viewer, for joining us. I want to remind you that we will be with you however long the legislature's in session, but we will be coming back to you every Thursday night from now until whenever the legislature goes home. Thanks again to the panel. Thanks again to you, the voters and viewers, both of those things, and we'll see you all next week.
Good night.
Great.
There's much more about your legislators online at pioneer.org. Find out more about the history of the program, who's been a guest, and watch all our past episodes. There's also a photo gallery, informative links, and much more. You can also get involved and stay in touch by following us on Twitter and join the discussion on our Facebook page. Thank you for watching Your Legislators. Your Legislators is made possible in part by the generous financial support of MAPE members, making Minnesota clean waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans.